one of the quotes they're going to use from you is you saying that this was a credible complaint. That will be used and spun as you're saying that it was true.
Valley Congressman Devin Nunes questioning the whistleblower's complaint, and that was released this week, as we've been talking about, as acting director of the National Intelligence, Joseph McGuire, testifying, where McGuire says it's unprecedented to have such a complaint against the president. And President Trump thought he was Mr. Nice Guy when he made that phone call. Well, our panel is ready to hash it out. Hopefully they'll be nice enough on the panel to each other. Let's take roll call. KC24 political analyst Jim Veros is here. Fresno City Councilman Gary Bredefeld. And State Director for Region 8 of the Democratic Party, Humberto Gomez Jr. Gentlemen, welcome all. Morning. Gary, you know, I'm going to come to you quickly. I want to begin with you because you have said in the past that some of your colleagues have participated in what you had called class warfare politics. So is President Trump abusing his power here to engage in political warfare?
Absolutely not. This is basically the Russia collusion 2.0 hoax. He's allowed to speak to other heads of state, which is what he did. There was no quid pro quo. There was no pressure. Here's the conversation. I read it. It's declassified. And I encourage all of your listeners to go and read the document, read the whistleblower complaint, and what you will find is this is just more of the same thing. An effort to unseat a president that was duly elected in 2016 that they cannot defeat at the polls, and so they're going to do everything they can to try to defeat him in another way.
Humberto, there's been so many levels to this, and you're a member of the California Democratic Party statewide. When Nancy Pelosi, who is also, a California politician, she didn't want to do this initially. It was a back and forth. But was this enough to really change her mind, or was she maybe coerced into thinking that it was because she made the call to call for that impeachment inquiry before we saw the transcript, before we saw the whistleblower complaint?
I believe that basically the members of the House, specifically the ones here from the Central Valley, they were left with no choice. They took an oath to defend and protect the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And when the President of the United States, in that transcript of that phone conversation, is soliciting a foreign government, the President of Ukraine, to please do me a favor, because that's what it said, to please do me a favor. If you do this, then guess what? I will go ahead and have a personal meeting with you, and yes, and I will go ahead, withhold the funding, and then the funding all of a sudden got approved.
He never said that.
No, first of all, the funding was withheld months before the phone call. We want to make sure we get that right. And again, President Zelensky had then said in that phone call, hey, I want to buy, some missiles from you. But again, it doesn't necessarily say that, so we want to be clear on that inside the transcript. Jim, I'll come to you. When you look at the conversation, President Trump says it was a nice conversation. Is that what we really came out with it? I mean, are voters looking at this and say, maybe that doesn't look so nice? Because the perception is that it doesn't look as innocent as he thinks it looks.
Well, and I also think that I wish that we cared about the Ukraine as much when the Russians were annexing Crimea, and the voters really didn't care about that a whole lot either. So I'm not sure if I don't see how a Trump supporter or an anti-Trump supporter would all of a sudden say, oh my gosh, he talks like this? This is what he does? Once again, this is Yankees versus Red Sox stuff. This isn't, I don't see this moving the needle. I mean, I think it moves it within the Beltway. I think it moves it with inside baseball with us. But do people in the Rust Belt swing states that are going to be deciding the next presidential election really care about the Ukraine? Probably not. So I think it's going to stay in the cycle. I think it's going to stay in the news. People are going to talk about it and disagree and quote or not quote different reports. I think, and people aren't going to like some of this, but I think the Democrats wanted to bring up this impeachment stuff because it's going to keep Joe Biden in the news, and it's going to keep negative stuff going after Biden, which allows other candidates to continue to go after him during the primary.
And not, well, before you answer, and I know you're going to get back to Humberto, I'll come to you because, and I know there are polls, and we look at them, you know, a little cross-eyed sometimes. I get that.
Right.
But the polls now show that Elizabeth Warren has moved ahead of Joe Biden because there's been talk of what is alleged corruption. Now, the investigation against the Bidens, there was nothing proven there. But maybe they go back and look at it. I'm not sure. But this is causing within the Democratic Party maybe some confliction.
Some misdirection.
I think the misdirection is sometimes overused. I think it's actually unified the Democratic Party because you didn't have enough members there wanting impeachment because the members, of course, their talking points, which, you know, were basically, we came to Washington to improve the situation of our constituents in the district. But when you hear that the transcript, when you hear that the whistleblower was concerned that they were moving those phone conversations from a particular, particular server to one that's designated for really specific national security interests in those phone conversations. And this was Inspector General. Absolutely, that was appointed by Trump.
It may unify members of Congress, but it's not going to unify folks that are running for president.
Right.
Believe me, Elizabeth Warren is loving every bit of this right now.
Gary,
you know what it's going to unify? It's going to unify the base of President Trump. They've seen this show before. We've seen this for 3 years when he was a candidate and now. They've tried to distract. They don't care about the impact that this has had on the country, this Russia hoax, this phony thing that fell like a dud when Mueller testified. That's what this is going to be, the same thing. There were 12 people listening to that phone conversation. Again, I encourage your listeners to read the conversation. He encourages them to look at corruption. That Ukrainian president ran on dealing with corruption. And Joe Biden's son was paid $50,000 a month to be on an oil company board in the Ukraine while Joe Biden was vice president. I don't think that's been really investigated, and that's what he was asking that Ukrainian president.
Before we get deep into all that, I want to say this, just for the voters and our viewers out there. You know, there isn't a poll to say whether just yet if they really care about this or not. And I'm sure there will be some polls taken to see if they want the president impeached or not. But does this create more division in our country? And two, guys, think about this. This could be the narrative until 2020, which means what? Nothing gets done in Congress?
Right,
Jim?
absolutely. No, listen, we've been talking about other issues that haven't been getting solved here in the last 6 months because it was time for the presidential elections. Nothing was going to get done anyways, really. This is new noise, but it's definitely noise. I don't see the impeachment going forward after the congressional vote because they don't have the votes in the Senate. The Democrats know that. It's going to be a nothing burger when it gets to that point. Right, now, if they want to make a statement, that's fine, but that's not going to drive other folks to the polls. It's just
nothing's been done. The best economy we've ever had. This is the most pro-life Second Amendment president. He's dealt with China, North Korea, Iraq, that presidents wouldn't deal with. And this man is moving the needle forward for the country. It's America first with Donald Trump.
It's not America first. It's actually me first, the president first, his interest first, his family first. Because this, even though you say it's a hoax, I know you didn't like those things that Bob Mueller specifically said in that report, but if you just say right now, Gary, that there was no Russian influence in our elections that has been proven, and the president now is asking
if there was Russian influence, Umberto, blame President Obama because he was the president.
Let me finish. Umberto, do you really believe, firmly believe the president will be impeached?
I believe, this is what I believe, from the impact of this. I think the president will, the process will go through. We don't have the Senate, like Jim said. So, I don't know, unless the Republicans suddenly change their mind, which I doubt, but there's some Republicans that are starting to. I mean, I was actually impressed with Mitt Romney. He's actually, look,
of course,
I was disturbed. I was disturbed. I was disturbed. I was like, oh, hallelujah. I have to actually think think about that I'm actually serious.
Mitt Romney, the phony Republican. That's who we support.
Well, he's still Republican.
Guys, we got to punctuate it there.
All right.
We got a lot more to come with these guys. Still to come. We're going to have a history lesson in impeachment, from the time it was created and how it's impacted our country.